Good evening.
Good evening, folks. Good to see you all.
Welcome to SDS Thursday. To everyone, people who've been here before and those who are here for the first time. My name is Dr. Julia Budnik and I'm a director of SDS Seminars. And tonight here with me is my co-director and the founder of SDS Seminars, Paul Grantham, who will be leading tonight's event. But while we're still gathering, I will ask you to start typing in the chat box. Locate your chat box. I'll do the same. There it is, chat. And just to let us know a little bit about yourself. Where you are in the world, first of all, and that's always of interest not just to us, but to other participants. People like to have a sense of the room, to know who are the colleagues who are in the room with them. So where you are in the world and what is your professional capacity, professional background, whether you are working with adults or children, whether you are here for yourself or for your clients. Because the topic we'll be discussing tonight is procrastination. And I wish I could say it only applies to our clients, but I think you would all agree it applies to us just as much. So whether you are here because you want to deal with this for yourself, or whether you want to get some useful tips for your clients as well. And also whether you have done any training with us, with Paul specifically. Maybe you've already done the training on procrastination, because we've been running it for quite a few years, about 6 years, Paul, or something like that.
Wow, really?
We've started it we started it long before COVID, didn't we?
We did.
And Paul also published a book on procrastination. When he's talking, I will pick one up from my bookshelf and will show it to you. So maybe you have that book, maybe you've read it, maybe you've done all the exercises. So if you have something to share on the topic, which you've already done, please do so. And my last question, which I always ask, is how did you hear about SDS Thursdays? Have you been to SDS Thursdays before, or whether it is your first one? And how did you find out about us? So you have plenty of questions to answer, so take your time, type your answers, and I know that everyone in the room always reads all the messages with great interest, because they are actually quite enlightening. And while we're still gathering, I want to just share my screen with you and tell you a little bit about SDS Thursdays and SDS Seminars, and about changes which we are introducing actually from this year, from the beginning of 2025. We are introducing changing to how the SDS Seminars and SDS Thursdays rather will be running. And I always take this a little bit of time in the beginning, because as you can see, people are still coming and the waiting room is still not empty. So I'll take a little bit of your time. Please bear with me, and I hope you'll find it useful, because there's some information which I want to share with you. For those who've been to SDS Thursdays before, this page is probably quite familiar. This is SDS homepage, the skillsdevelopment.co.uk. And you can see in that picture, I'm showing that very book which I mentioned today, I Want to Stop Procrastinating Now, which Paul wrote quite a few years ago. So on SDS website, you can see the upcoming events tab here, and you will see the course which we will be introducing to you today. It starts on 29th of January, and it's called I Want to Stop Procrastinating Now. It's a 2-day program on working with procrastination. The course is suitable for you in your professional capacity, also for you in your personal capacity, or for your clients. If you have clients who struggle with procrastination and you think it might have an impact on their other problems, which we will be covering tonight, please feel free to suggest that they might book on this course and come in and work with Paul on this course. So the course, as I said, is 2 full days, 29th and 30th of January. And we traditionally run it at the end of January because usually people start every new year with New Year resolutions. But by the end of January, very often we all realize that our New Year's resolutions are somewhat moving towards flying out of the window. Sometimes they already have. So that's why we put it at the end of January to just help you to keep that resolute, to keep that determination and motivation. So this is how you find the course. It's very easy to find on SDS website. And the other thing I wanted to mention before I pass the microphone to Paul is the changes which I said we are making to SDS Thursdays in connection with our YouTube channel. We've been running SDS Thursdays now for almost, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, we started in 2020. So very soon it will be 5 years we've been running them. And they've always been free, and they will continue to be free for participants who participate in live SDS Thursdays. But we've shared them all for free on our YouTube channel. And many people who watch them on YouTube come back to us and ask, can I have a certificate for watching this training event? And we say, no, of course you can't, because we are not really giving certificates away for free. And to try to square this circle, we've decided to create on our YouTube channel, to create a membership, basically, to create a membership. It's called SDS Priority Membership. And if you become Priority member, you will have the full recordings of these Thursdays, as well as all the previous Thursdays, and you will be able to print out a certificate for watching this event. So it will be a 1-hour CPD certificate, but if you watch lots of them, then you can collect quite a few hours. So in order to join SDS Priority Membership, you go on our channel. It's called SDS Psychotherapy Training on YouTube, and you click the button join. It's next to the button subscribe, which I also recommend to click, but also click the button join, and it will take you to the membership page. It's $4.99 a month, and we are going to publish also some of our recorded video trainings on here only for members, so they won't be in free access. So, and if you're a member, you can do them for this amount of money, $4.99 a month, which is not that much, and you can get a certificate with all of them. So this is something new which we're doing. But as I said, if you don't want to spend any money, that's absolutely fine. Just come to live Thursdays, and they will still be free for everyone who wants to participate. Okay, so I'll stop sharing, and it's 11 minutes past 7. In 4 minutes, I'll be locking the room. But now I'm very happy to introduce Paul Grantham to you. Maybe many of you worked with Paul. I will read through your comments and find out. So Paul is a founder of sdsseminars. Lots of people ask me what SDS stands for. It's Skills Development Service, and that's why our website is still called skillsdevelopment.co.uk. So Paul, procrastination. I know you've been fascinated with this topic, and I also know that I gave you quite a challenge with tonight's event, because I have actually read a few articles where people were arguing that procrastination might be a result of depression. And then I thought, that's a very interesting question. It's a bit of a chicken and egg dilemma, because whether it's procrastination is a result of depression, or constant procrastination can lead to depression. That was just something what came to my mind, and I know, unfortunately, I unloaded it on you. So it's up to you to try to sort this out for us. So Paul, welcome, and please say hello to everyone.
Hi, thanks very much, Julia, and welcome folks this evening. Yeah, this whole issue about the relationship between procrastination and depression. What caught my attention or imagination with this is that although procrastination is undoubtedly a common issue amongst many of my clients, and I suspect many of yours as well, my interest in this field was actually originally much broader. And I was as interested in procrastination as an issue, a strategy, a way of behaving amongst everybody, not just amongst those who are depressed. And indeed, the 2-day training course that I run on this, as Julia's mentioned, is experiential. And for that particular reason, the usual sort of approach that I've taken with this in that particular training is to have it as something which participants themselves can use to address their own tendency to procrastinate. But having said that, one of the things I also emphasize in the training is that the particular training package that has been put together is actually a therapeutic program that originally developed off the back of working with clients. So in a sense, my interest has shifted. So this whole question of the relationship between depression and procrastination in many ways took me back to the original interest that I actually had in this area. And I don't know if it's because social media seems to overhear the conversations that we seem to be having these days, but suddenly in my social media feed, would you believe it, I start receiving memes relating to procrastination and depression. What an incredible coincidence, one might say. So I was looking through these memes, and one of them in particular struck me, and I thought it would be a useful starting point, really, for the way to look at this relationship between depression and procrastination tonight. So I'm just going to share my screen with you on this. So hopefully that's okay for you. And I guess the first thing I'll do really is to show the meme that came through. Maybe, I don't know, maybe some of you have received this in your social media feed as well. You're going to ask me which particular social media platform it came on. I think it came on LinkedIn. But having said that, I have noticed that my Facebook and Twitter accounts still seem to be producing, not this particular one, but other memes regarding this topic. So I looked at this because I thought it was quite interesting. It says procrastination is not laziness, it's a depression response. It's a signal that we need to show ourselves compassion and address the underlying causes, not shame ourselves into action. And then underneath that, there's an identification of, I guess, what is hinted at, although it's not explicitly stated, hinted at might be the causes or the effects or the expressions of procrastination. And I started looking at this, and a number of things struck me about it. It struck me, first of all, that this is a partial truth. Please notice the word partial here, but that I think, incidentally, is quite common, as I'm sure you're aware, about a lot of things that get posted on social media. It's not you know, an unsupportable idea, and there's a lot of truth in it. But it also struck me that it contained a number of assumptions and ideas which I didn't think were true at all, and actually I thought were quite unhelpful. So I wanted to sort of get into this and to sort of take it apart and use it as a sort of expansion, really, for thinking about this. So let's first of all just briefly touch on the relationship, generally speaking, between procrastination and mental health. Because the thing I want to emphasize is the relationship's complex. So the first thing to say, which I don't think is that surprising, is that poor mental health leads to procrastination. So we know that a lot of our clients that we're working with are often involved in facing all sorts of decisions, small and large, and often have great difficulties with them. We work with people who are anxious, who are worried about making the wrong decision and hang back on making a decision, fear of failure or fear of success even. But we also are working with folks who are depressed too, where basically taking action feels like it takes up too much energy and they can't do things, and so as a result of that they procrastinate. It's also worth saying, and I think incidentally, this is an important point that's not actually, I think, recognized as much as it should be, is that we can actually see that procrastination is an issue within therapy itself. In a way, I don't know how many of you are familiar with dialectical behavior therapy, but I think that one of the great things it actually offers, whatever modality you're working with, is it gives emphasis and focus to the concept of therapy interfering behaviors. You know, things that the client might be doing which interfere with the process of therapy, and which in many, well, certainly within dialectical behavior therapy, are seen as a priority for addressing before you address anything else. Because the idea is if you can't address these things first, then basically the therapy is not going to go forward. Either people drop out, or they engage in risky behavior, or they basically don't do things. I'm sure that practically all of us who, for instance, are involved in giving our clients therapeutic tasks in some way, shape, or form, or encouraging them to engage in therapeutic tasks, will be very familiar indeed with the fact that it's very common for our clients to procrastinate in doing those particular tasks. I'm sure you're also familiar with the fact that many of our clients are facing issues or dilemmas which they need to address and think through, and that they procrastinate regarding that as well. So I mention this because I think that whatever you see the relationship as being between procrastination and mental health, undoubtedly procrastination itself is, in my opinion, an issue that needs to be addressed within therapy, because it's going to be something in most instances that will represent an obstacle for the client. But it's also worth bearing in mind that procrastination leads to poor mental health as well. So, you know, if I'm someone who is depressed, for instance, and I keep putting things off, I don't know, I don't look at bills that I get sent. If I'm not doing particular tasks that I'm supposed to do, if I put off seeking help for my difficulties, that actually makes things worse. So in a sense, although procrastination can be caused by poor mental health, the process of procrastination amplifies and makes the mental health problem worse. So there's, in my opinion, a pretty clear set of different ways in which procrastination is tied to mental health problems. And it's one of the reasons why, whether you're interested in this from a personal perspective or whether you're interested in it from the perspective of your clients, I just think it's a real central issue. Interestingly enough, though, I can't remember whenever I went to a conference on mental health, and I found that how to tackle or how to help clients with their procrastination was ever anything that was actually raised or spoken about. But I hope that you're going to feel differently about that after tonight. So let's come back to that original meme and look at some of the assumptions within it. So the first assumption is quite clearly that depression leads to procrastination. And there's an implication in that as well, particularly I think in view of the things that are said afterwards, which is the implication is that you must address depression first in order to stop procrastination. In other words, you know, if someone is procrastinating and they're depressed, then you really should not be directly addressing the procrastination. You should be addressing the depression first. And that secondly, if someone who is depressed is procrastinating, it is because they're depressed. It's not about other factors that might actually be around for people. So that's sort of one assumption that's sort of contained within it. And it refers into a broader assumption, which is commonly carried, I think, by many of us in the work that we actually do, which is broadly speaking that to change behavior, we need to change feelings. So basically, if I am feeling anxious and I don't go out, then you need to do work with me to feel less anxious before I can then start going out. And the same here with depression, that you need to help me work with my depression before we start looking at changing basically the behavioral consequences of that, which in this instance is procrastination. So there's this underlying, slightly implied assumption that's associated with it. And that if you try and reduce procrastination without addressing depression first, that leads you, and I'll take you back in a minute just to that original meme, that leads you to actually end up shaming yourself or trying to shame yourself into action by telling yourself you're lazy. Let me just go back to that original meme, just so you can see how, certainly in my opinion, that's implied in that particular statement. That is the thing, incidentally, which I mean, the first assumption is not one that I agree with, and we're going to come back to that in a minute. But I actually find this second assumption probably slightly more harmful, really, because it's basically saying to take action when you're feeling depressed can only be achieved through self-shaming, and that this is bad. Okay, so one of the implications of that is that if you try and change things while you're still depressed, the only way of doing that is to beat yourself up, really, and to tell yourself, you know, that you're failing or that you're a bad person. I sort of mention all of this because these are interesting assumptions which float around, and I think that not only are they not, or certainly not fully true, in some instances I think they're totally false, but that they also, I think, fail to recognize the whole process of how change occurs, not just for our clients, incidentally, but for us as well. Because there is this assumption underlying this idea of basically shaming yourself into action, which is that taking action when you don't feel like it equals shaming yourself. That's the underlying assumption here, that if we do things when we don't feel like it, then the only way we can make ourselves do something is to berate ourselves in some particular way. And that's the one which I think is particularly not true. And I thought I'd just get you folks to have a think about what at one level, you see, this is the thing that's interesting. I suspect that when you do this exercise, you will find it relatively easy to actually do. But nonetheless, that the original assumptions in the meme still very often affect us and affect our thinking. So this is what I'd like you to do, really, is to just spend a few moments just jotting down, reflecting upon and jotting down your thoughts about these two particular questions. What do you do to feel more motivated when you're not feeling particularly motivated? Okay, in many ways, a fairly simple question. So what do you do to feel more motivated when you're not feeling particularly motivated? And if anyone's going to be sitting there saying, well, I feel motivated all the time, well, just think back to what it's like on Monday morning, or when you've got to get up early in order to travel somewhere. Are you always one of those people that jumps out of bed and says, thank God it's a new day and I've got to be doing things? Or are you actually lying there thinking, why the hell have I got to do this? Can I not have another 15 minutes in bed, etc., etc.? But also what I'd like you to do is to think about what it is that you do to do this. Now, I know that's a slightly strange question, but, you know, without giving the game away here, we probably do things which we know help us to get motivated, to get going. And there's that secondary question, which is that these things don't necessarily come naturally or automatically. So what is it that enables us to do those particular things? So I'm just going to give you, not long, you know, maybe 15, 20 seconds just to reflect on this particular question. And what I'd like you to do for either or both questions is to just jot something in the chat box, folks. Just drop something in the chat box just to share what it is that you do to feel more motivated when you're not feeling particularly motivated. And let's face it, the whole issue of motivation or poor motivation is integrally tied into procrastination. And what do you do to do it? How do you manage to do that thing that you try to use to help you to actually be more motivated? And let's just have a look and see what's coming up here, just to get some ideas. I say enough. I usually think about my long-term goals. I move around. Gosh, they're coming through now. Outside for a few minutes. I find some music to help me get me going. Have a coffee, go for a walk, rest. So there's quite a few here about physical movement, which is interesting. Speak to myself aloud about how it will benefit me. I think how good it will feel. Put some music on. So to feel more motivated, I plan a reward post-activity. Tidy everything up. Gosh, that's great, Injurit, because I would love something that would actually motivate me to tidy things up. Rather than it being a course for me to be more motivated. I have my first cuppa. Okay, so we got, oh, that's a great idea, Catherine. I break things down into manageable chunks. I think about Windy Dryden's if you want to be depressed words. If I want to be depressed, continue to do this. Okay, folks. Right, now, the key thing that I want to emphasize here is twofold, really. Nobody says, I wait until I feel motivated before I act. Nobody's saying that, are they? You know, nobody's lying. So, folks, I'll leave you at that point. I hope that you're going to be signing up and coming along to the full 2-day course. But apart from that, I just hope it gives you some thinking or some thoughts, really, about this whole relationship between depression and procrastination. I don't know if there are any questions or comments that people want to come back on.
Yes, thank you, Paul. There are some questions and there are some comments which I wanted to share with you. But before I do that, as I promised, I found the book. So I want to stop procrastinating now. It's available on Amazon worldwide. And I did put the link to the book in the chat, but I can probably do it again. So if you want to go for the book, you can try it. It is full of exercises, which if you can't come to the course for whatever reason, you can go through the exercises yourself. The completing exercises and gradually going through achieving your task. Paul will be giving out on the course. He will be giving out worksheets, which will be these exercises and more, which you will be completing during the course of 2 days. So I hope you'll still consider coming to the 2-day course. Another very quick thing, somebody said that they tried to sign up to our YouTube channel and they couldn't see the join button. I think in order to click the join button, you need to log in to YouTube or log into your Google account, which is linked to YouTube. If you're not logged in, then they won't give you the option to comment, to subscribe, or to join. So just make sure that you're logged in before you click the join button. And the question I wanted to ask from the chat box, there were some absolutely excellent comments, and some people were spotting the avoidance and things like that incredibly quickly. So what I wanted to just to say, there was one particular question from Edison. He is saying, are you saying the only reason people procrastinate is depression? Obviously not. This was just the theme of tonight's session. And he's asking, what about some lack of life skills, consistency, organizational skills, or time management? Can you very briefly address that, please, Paul?
Yeah. No, I don't think that is the answer. I feel quite happy to give a categorical answer on that. What's quite interesting is the vast majority of books that are actually written on how to deal with procrastination tend to take a time management approach. And I have rarely ever seen them being helpful or useful for people. Because in a way, time management requires us to be able to tolerate bad feelings in the first place. So actually, if that, that's the first thing I want to say about that. So my experience tends to be that if people try and address this, they will say something like, I've tried time management and it hasn't worked. What they actually mean is I haven't been able to put it into practice. The other thing to say, which makes me a little bit wary of focusing on time management, is it makes it sound like you need this slightly complicated technological solution to this as a problem. The reason, I just lack time management skills. I don't think it's about that at all. I think you can actually procrastinate less without even touching the issue of time management. So for anyone that's, and you won't, I'll happily say, you won't find any time management at all in the 2-day course. We will not be looking at that whatsoever. If you want to have a look at time management, can I just say, I hope you obviously buy my book, but just go on Amazon. You'll find loads of books on procrastination and time management, and yet somehow or other people still publish them, and somehow or other people still have procrastination problems. I think it's about a different issue.
Yes, very, very similar sort of following from your answer. Mary says, what about Oliver Berkman's idea that everyone procrastinates and that there will be always too much to do? I feel it's from the same sort of area.
It is, although it is a slightly different issue. Because there are some other potential factors in there. So some people procrastinate, for example, because they are naturally perfectionistic. We know that people who have perfectionism problems have a greater tendency to procrastinate. Not surprisingly, they don't think they've done enough, or it's not quite good enough, and they've got to work further. And the other thing to say is that there are other skill deficits around which can contribute to this, and undoubtedly, given the example that you've just given, Julia, difficulties saying no and assertiveness skills is another one of those. Although the interesting thing again about that is if I am unassertive and I have difficulties saying no to myself or to somebody else about tasks, that's all again got to do with my difficulties in being unable to tolerate feeling bad in terms of what I do. So in a strange way, it brings us back to the same issue again.
And the very last question, because I found it fascinating, because well, you will hear, I will read it. Brendan is saying, as a therapeutic approach, are you saying this comes under behavioral activation, meaning your ideas on procrastination? Or what therapeutic approach would you call your ideas? Very good thoughts as they are. That's a fascinating question, because I am very interested to hear what you say. Yes.
It's an integrated CBT approach.
Yes. It's very
so
integrated.
it draws from first, second, and third wave CBT. So it draws on, you know, classic CBT. It draws on behavioral theory. It also draws on things like ACT and obviously DBT and compassion-focused therapy. So it's
more than that, isn't it? I can see elements of motivational interviewing,
yes,
and solution-focused therapy in it. So yeah. It is very integrated, and I think just showing the breadth of well, I don't like that expression, but I will use it here. Your therapeutic toolbox enables you to actually approach something quite in an integrated way. Yeah.
Just very briefly on that, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention it earlier on, the whole program starts by getting people to think about why they want to overcome their procrastination in the first place. Because I think that unless you've got clear motivational reasons for wanting to do it, rather than just thinking it's a bad thing or broadly creating problems, I don't think you'll be able to address it. So we do actually start off with that, and we use some MI techniques in connection.
So I hope this session gave you some taster of what comes at the 2-day course. If you can sign up for it, please do. We might not repeat it next year. We might not go for it next year. I'm not saying 100%, but very likely. So if you can do it this year, please do. If you choose to buy Paul's book and try to do the exercises yourself, again, you are very welcome to do that. And we hope to see you at our next free SDS Thursday. But if you're missing some of them, do sign up on our YouTube channel, and hopefully you will always be able to catch up. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. It was very, very fascinating evening. And you can unmute yourself and say your goodbyes, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
Really interesting, thought-provoking. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Many thanks.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Hope the rest of your evening's good.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.